You're not the type I'd show my parents, she muttered before leaving. So I packed up and disappeared without a word. I never thought someone could dismiss a year of devotion with such casual cruelty, but Isabella had a talent for surprises. We'd met at the opening night of a contemporary art exhibit downtown, where she was working the gallery's front desk while finishing her interior design degree. I remember watching her explain a particularly abstract piece to confused visitors, her hands moving expressively as she spoke about negative space and emotional resonance. I love that you actually get art, she told me over coffee the next week, her dark eyes lighting up when I showed her my latest logo designs on my laptop. My ex never understood why I'd spend hours at galleries. He said it was pretentious. She painted herself as someone seeking authenticity, tired of superficial relationships with guys who cared more about appearances than substance. I want someone real, she'd say, running her fingers through my hair as we lay in my apartment, surrounded by my design sketches and her fabric samples. Someone who values creativity over corporate ladder climbing. I believed every word, especially when she'd praise my work ethic and artistic integrity during late-night conversations about our dreams. When Isabella decided to quit the gallery and focus on her studies full-time, I didn't hesitate to step up financially. I covered our dinners out, her portion of groceries when she stayed over, even helped with her student loan payments when money got tight. "You're amazing, David," she'd whisper, curling up against me after I'd transfer another payment to her account. "I'm so lucky to have found someone who believes in me." For months, I thought we were building something solid, two creatives supporting each other's ambitions in Austin's vibrant art scene, planning weekend trips to design markets and dreaming about collaborating on projects once she graduated. I thought I'd found something real with Isabella. We'd been together 10 months, and despite the usual relationship adjustments, things felt solid between us. She was pursuing her interior design degree while working part-time at a local gallery, and I respected her ambition as a freelance graphic designer trying to build my own client base in Austin's competitive creative scene. Everything started shifting when she began attending what she called design networking events that seemed disconnected from her actual school program, returning home well past midnight with increasingly vague explanations about meeting influential industry contacts. "You wouldn't understand the dynamics, David," she'd say when I asked about these late-night gatherings. "It's about building relationships with people who can actually advance my career." She became obsessed with luxury brands and expensive home decor, suddenly critical of my modest apartment and the secondhand furniture I'd carefully collected over the years. "This couch looks like something from a college dorm," she'd mutter, scrolling through West Elm catalogs on her phone. "And those mismatched plates are embarrassing when I have friends over." The name Marcus started appearing in her conversations with increasing frequency. A successful commercial architect she'd met at one of these mysterious events, whose sophisticated taste and business connections she praised constantly. Marcus was saying that anyone serious about design needs to understand the luxury market. She'd tell me while critiquing my IKEA bookshelf, "He thinks my aesthetic sense is really advanced for someone my age." Her phone became a fortress of privacy, angled away from me during conversations and protected by a new passcode she claimed was for professional security. She started dressing more expensively for these networking sessions, wearing outfits that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, claiming they were investments in my professional image. My suspicions crystallized into cold reality when I was downtown delivering a logo design to a client and spotted Isabella through the window of an upscale restaurant I could never afford, holding hands across the table with a well-dressed older man who was definitely not conducting professional networking while sharing intimate kisses with my girlfriend. I took photos of everything: the hotel receipt, the earring, those business cards scattered like confetti across our dresser, then drove straight to Isabella's parents' house in Cedar Park. I'd always gotten along well with her mother, Maria, who'd treated me like the son she never had during our Sunday dinners. "David, what brings you here?" she asked, opening the door with her usual warm smile. I showed her the photos on my phone without saying much, watching her face change as she processed what she was seeing. "Mija has been lying to us, too," she whispered, shaking her head. She told us these networking events were for school. I drove home and changed the locks that afternoon. Funny how a 20-minute trip to Home Depot can mark the end of 3 years. I packed Isabella's designer clothes, her expensive skincare products, and all those gallery opening invitations into neat boxes, stacking them by the door like a monument to misplaced priorities. When she came home from another professional development dinner at 10:30 that night, her key wouldn't turn. I watched through the peephole as she tried it 3 times before knocking. "David, what's going on?" "My key isn't working." I opened the door just wide enough to slide the printed photos through the crack. The silence stretched for 30 seconds before she spoke again. "Baby, let me explain. This isn't what it looks like." "Really?" "Because it looks like Marcus Hoffman from Hoffman & Associates has been doing a lot more than reviewing your portfolio." I could hear her breathing change. "David, please. He's a professional contact. These meetings are about building relationships in the industry." "Is that what we're calling it?" "You don't understand the design world like I do. Marcus has connections at firms in Dallas and Houston. He appreciates my vision for where interior design is heading." I almost laughed. "Your vision?" "Yes, my vision. And honestly, David, you've never really supported my ambitions the way someone like Marcus does. He sees potential in me that goes beyond this." She gestured at our apartment door. "Beyond what, exactly?" "Beyond food truck graphics and local coffee shop logos. I need someone who understands that I want more than a bohemian lifestyle in East Austin. I want the house in Westlake, the gallery connections, the client base that comes with real success." There it was, the truth she'd been dancing around for months. "So this is my fault for not making enough money?" "It's not about fault, it's about compatibility. Marcus gets that I'm not going to be satisfied with farmers market booths and indie band posters forever." I looked at her through that door crack, this woman I'd supported through 2 years of design school, whose student loan payments I'd helped cover when her gallery job barely paid minimum wage. "The funny thing is, Isabella, I would have supported whatever dreams you had. But apparently your dreams included lying to me every Tuesday and Thursday for 3 months. David, don't make this harder than it needs to be. We both know you're more comfortable with simpler things. Marcus and I, we're aligned on lifestyle goals." I set her boxes outside the door. "Well, now you're free to pursue those goals without having to pretend I'm good enough for your parents' dinner table." I watched the fallout unfold from my quiet distance like a slow-motion car crash I couldn't look away from. Isabella's mother, true to form, had her phone out before the ink was dry on our conversation, and by sunrise half of Austin's social circles knew about the affair through the family grapevine. The first casualty came fast. Isabella's cousin Emma called her that Tuesday morning to deliver the news that she was no longer welcome as a bridesmaid at her wedding next month. "I can't have that kind of drama at my ceremony," Emma told her. According to the tearful voicemail Isabella left me that I deleted without finishing. The irony wasn't lost on me that the same family connections Isabella had always leveraged for gallery openings and networking events were now working against her with ruthless efficiency. Meanwhile, Marcus was discovering what I'd learned the hard way, that Isabella's charm had an expiration date, especially when real commitment entered the picture. She'd started showing up at his downtown architecture firm unannounced, talking about apartment hunting and making their relationship Instagram official, pushing for the kind of public validation she'd never seemed to need from me. "She's getting clingy." I overheard him telling someone at a coffee shop near his office where I'd gone for a client meeting. I thought she was more independent than this. By the third week, his number had joined mine in her blocked contacts, though she didn't realize I knew that detail until I saw her posting cryptic stories about men who can't handle real women. The practical consequences hit her harder than the emotional ones, I think. She'd given notice at the gallery back in April, so confident about moving in with me after graduation that she'd already started declining shifts and looking at furniture for our hypothetical shared space. Now she was sleeping in her Honda Civic in various parking lots around town, rotating between the 24-hour gym, the Walmart on Ben White, and sometimes the lot behind the diner where we used to get late-night breakfast. Her Instagram became a masterclass in victimhood theater, artfully composed shots of her makeshift car living setup with captions about society's impossible standards for women who dare to pursue authentic connections and family betrayal in the age of conditional love. I found myself screenshotting some of the more dramatic posts, not out of cruelty, but because the disconnect between her words and reality felt like performance art. The Austin creative community, smaller and more gossipy than people realized, had already moved on from Isabella's version of events. Her former classmates at the design program started leaving her out of group projects and study sessions, and I heard through a mutual friend that Professor Williams had pulled her aside to discuss how personal choices affected professional reputations in their field. "Your judgment is being questioned," he'd apparently told her. "And in design, trust and reliability are everything." She'd posted about that conversation too, framing it as gender discrimination and academic persecution, but the comments section told a different story, mostly silence where support used to be. The harassment escalated beyond what I'd anticipated from someone who'd claimed I wasn't worth showing to her parents. Isabella started appearing at my regular coffee shop on 6th Street, sitting 3 tables away with red-rimmed eyes, staring until I'd pack up my laptop and leave. She followed me to client meetings, once bursting into tears in the lobby of a marketing firm while I was presenting logo concepts, claiming I was destroying her life by being stubborn. I documented everything. Photos of her car parked across from my apartment building at midnight, screenshots of the 47 missed calls in one evening, witness statements from 2 clients who'd watched her create scenes. The restraining order hearing took 20 minutes. The judge reviewed my evidence folder and granted a 6-month protection order without hesitation. "Mr. Torres, this behavior is clearly escalating beyond normal relationship disputes," he said, sliding the paperwork across his desk. It was during this chaos that I met Carmen at a sustainable fashion boutique in South Austin, where I'd been hired to photograph their new eco-friendly clothing line. She was the designer behind the hemp fiber dresses and recycled cotton jackets I was shooting, and unlike Isabella's dismissive comments about my tree hugger clients limiting my profit potential, Carmen appreciated my commitment to working with environmentally conscious businesses. "Most photographers just see green marketing as a trend," she said, adjusting one of her hand-dyed scarves under the studio lights. "But you actually understand the mission behind what we're creating." We talked between shots about sustainable business practices, local artist communities, and the satisfaction of creating something meaningful rather than just profitable. Conversations that reminded me what intellectual connection actually felt like. 3 weeks later, when Carmen invited me to a documentary screening about textile waste, I realized I was spending time with someone who valued the same things I did, someone who saw my principles as strengths rather than financial limitations. The aftermath of someone's true character being exposed creates ripple effects that reach far beyond what they initially imagine. I learned this firsthand as I watched Isabella's world systematically unravel while mine quietly rebuilt itself into something stronger. 6 months after the restraining order, Isabella had relocated to Dallas to live with her estranged aunt, a woman she'd previously dismissed as tragically suburban during our relationship. The irony wasn't lost on me that someone who'd spent so much energy criticizing others' life choices had been reduced to depending on family charity. Her social media presence, which I occasionally glimpsed through mutual acquaintances, had devolved into a continuous stream of bitter commentary about Austin's creative community. She posted lengthy rants about how the city's art scene was toxic and judgmental toward ambitious women, conveniently omitting her role in burning every professional bridge she'd built. Meanwhile, my graphic design business was experiencing unprecedented growth, largely because word had spread throughout Austin's tight-knit creative network about my professionalism during what everyone knew had been a chaotic personal situation. Clients began specifically seeking me out, telling me they valued working with someone who maintained integrity under pressure. "David handled everything with such class," one gallery owner told a mutual friend. "That's the kind of person you want representing your brand." The contrast between Isabella's public meltdowns and my quiet consistency had apparently made quite an impression on people who mattered in our industry. Through Carmen's connections in sustainable fashion, I'd started landing corporate clients who appreciated thoughtful, environmentally conscious design approaches, work that felt meaningful in ways my previous projects never had. Isabella's family, particularly her parents, had maintained their distance from her since learning the full scope of what had transpired between us. Her mother had actually called me once to apologize, saying she was deeply ashamed that our daughter embarrassed someone as decent as you. I'd graciously accepted but kept the conversation brief. Their family dynamics weren't my responsibility to navigate anymore. Around the 6-month mark, mutual friends mentioned that Isabella had finally started therapy, apparently beginning to acknowledge the patterns of behavior that had led to her current isolation. However, her attempts to contact me, whether through new social media accounts, mutual friends, or carefully worded emails, were effectively blocked by the restraining order that remained in place. My lawyer had advised keeping it active for the full year, given Isabella's history of boundary violations when she felt cornered. The few messages that did reach me through intermediaries all followed the same template: claims of personal growth, references to therapy insights, and requests for closure conversations that I recognized as attempts to test whether I'd soften my position. But I learned too much about my own worth to entertain the idea that someone who'd systematically undermined my confidence deserved access to my peace of mind. A year later, I found myself standing at the podium of the Austin Design Conference, looking out at a packed auditorium as I wrapped up my presentation on sustainable branding. The irony wasn't lost on me that Isabella had once dismissed my environmental focus as limiting my market appeal. Carmen sat in the front row, beaming with pride as I discussed the branding work we'd collaborated on for her sustainable fashion line. After my talk, several former Dallas acquaintances approached me during the networking session. "You know, Isabella's been trying to rebuild her reputation back home," one mentioned casually. "She's been posting all these reflective pieces about personal growth and taking responsibility for past mistakes." I nodded politely, though I noticed she still hadn't managed a direct apology. Another designer added, "She went through this whole victim phase on social media after you left, but I think people saw through it pretty quickly." Carmen appeared at my side, sliding her arm through mine with natural ease. "Ready for my presentation?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement about unveiling her latest collection. As we walked toward the main stage together, I realized how completely Isabella's rejection had freed me. She'd been right about one thing: I wasn't the type she'd show her parents. I was someone who chose artistic integrity over commercial appeal, who believed creativity should serve purpose beyond profit. Carmen understood that my values weren't limitations to overcome, but strengths to celebrate. While Isabella was still crafting social media posts about personal growth, I was actually living it. The woman who'd once made me feel not good enough had unknowingly pushed me towards someone who saw my passion for meaningful work as exactly what she'd been looking for. Standing backstage as Carmen prepared to present the sustainable fashion line I'd helped brand, I felt nothing but gratitude for Isabella's shallow assessment. She'd freed me to find someone who didn't just tolerate my principles, but shared them completely.